In other words.
Good morning. Welcome to In Other Words. I'm your host, Susan Scher. And my guest today is Bob Clendenin. Now, you may not know the name, but he's one of those actors you go, oh, him. Yeah, I know who he is. Your brand, as they call it now, as an actor, is really the creepy dude.
I guess it has sort of fallen into that box, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Fine by me.
Well, that's the thing. Clearly, you can do other stuff. I mean, you can, when you choose to, quite normal.
Right.
But,
it's so interesting how you end up sort of falling into a box, and the old adage was, oh, you don't want to get typecast. But I think, especially in today's market, the ability to sort of know exactly what purpose you serve can help a lot of particularly like character actors, you know.
That segues beautifully into one of the questions I had planned to ask you.
Right.
How difficult was it for you to accept the weird guy?
You know, it really hasn't been. I think there's something to be said for just accepting who you are and the beauty of what we all have about a sort of acceptance of who you are and what makes you special and unique and interesting. As I age, the idea of being beautiful and is not. I find people with character in their face far more interesting and far more intriguing to me as a viewer, and so I embrace it as an actor as well.
Yeah, oh yeah. I remember when I finally got that I was not a leading lady. I'm a character actor.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more freeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that a lot of times, particularly for people as they age, you know, out of the leading role categories, that's a tough pill to swallow at first.
Yes, I wanted to play the leads. And that's not who I am. I'm the quirky best friend. I'm not as quirky as you tend to be. Earlier in your career, I know you did a lot of other kinds of roles. You did Shakespeare. You did all kinds of stuff. Do you
and I still try to?
That was the next question.
I definitely still try to. It's just for my own sanity to have enough of a variety and to feel that I'm actually growing as an actor. I started a theater company with some people probably 20 years ago, and I'm still very active with them and doing a play now, which is not a role that I would normally do, but it's a good opportunity for me to actually be the normal straight. I'm playing just a normal, decent priest, and it's not a role that I would ever probably get cast in on TV. For me personally as an actor, it's a nice challenge that I wouldn't normally get, and I think it's really helpful to me in my other work. And it keeps me it keeps me from going a little bit stir crazy if you feel like the box you're in is too tight.
Yeah, I can understand that. Tell me about your theater group.
Well, we started in the mid-'90s, and there was a bunch of recent grads, and so the six of us started this theater company. It was probably 1995 or 96. And we had, a fair amount of success really early on, and still a very strong, one of the stronger L.A., they call them waiver theater companies. It's a small house, 99 seats or less.
What is the name of your company?
Circle X, the Circle X Theater.
So what are you doing now?
So right now we're doing this play called An Undivided Heart by Yusef Toporov. The last play I did with Circle X was this remarkable play called Trevor about a woman who raises a chimpanzee. And and the woman was Laurie Metcalf.
Oh my!
And she was unbelievable. And that show won. It really swept here in Los Angeles. It won Best New Play, Best Original, Best Small Theater, Best Ensemble. It was really a remarkable production. The country doesn't know that because they know the stars, Clooney and all those guys. There's a huge section of just these sort of middle-class working actors who cobble together a living, generally without a day job. You'd never know their names.
I ran across a number of very interesting pictures of you.
Scary.
Why do you do so much drag?
I do a lot of drag, don't I?
Yeah.
I think because it's not necessarily that I seek it, but I think a lot of people love to put me in a dress.
Probably because you're so tall and so clearly not a woman.
I think there was an episode in Cougar Town where we were Civil War reenactors, and of course I had to have a hoop skirt.
Well, not just a hoop skirt. You look like Little Bo Peep.
I do. That was elaborate. And I had sprints in it. Yeah.
That just brings up such an interesting picture. Sprinting in a hoop skirt. Hoop skirts were definitely not built for that.
They were not designed for that.
So what about the purple
look
skirt?
At that again. Now, which purple skirt is that? What photo is that?
Wild West, it looks like. You've got a turquoise bodice.
Sure. Yeah, this was a show called Quick Draw. It was on Hulu, and it was a fantastic show. It was a fully improvised Western. The creators would write a story outline that would just take us through the plot points of this particular episode, but no dialogue would be written. The picture you're looking at was a particular episode where we went undercover as ladies of the night to infiltrate a gang that was holed up in the hills. And as you can see, we couldn't be a less desirable group of ladies of the night.
Well, and the other guy didn't even get boobs. You at least got boobs.
I did get some boobs, yeah.
And then I see this one, you're in a yellow cardigan, pink flowered dress.
God, you're right. It is a lot. Now that you're starting to lay them out, it's a lot.
These are on your website, Bob.
I know. Yeah, and so that was another show called 10 Items or Less on PBS. And, that ties us together. That was an undercover episode. We worked in a supermarket, and I was going undercover to see if we could catch some shoplifters.
One thing you have to know, listeners.
Like my grandmother, yeah.
One thing you have to know, listeners, is that Bob has a heavy 5 o'clock shadow. In
almost always.
Everything, yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry, you were undercover.
So I was undercover, and we were looking to bust some shoplifters at the grocery store, and I don't know why I was dressed up as a grandmother, how we justified it, but
because it's funny.
You just have to, with comedy, you just gotta go, you know what? We're just doing it because it's funny.
Yeah. And what about? Now you're not dressed in drag here, but you were dressed in 70s clothes, which could be mistaken for drag. They're definitely androgynous.
Is that with the blonde wig?
Yes, and the yellow, ridiculous bell-bottoms. They're probably polyester, too.
That was actually the same show. The same show, 10 Items or Less, really loved to spend as much of their money on wardrobe budget as they possibly could. So I don't remember. Honestly, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago. I don't remember how we justified, whether it was a flashback sequence, or why I was like a Spinal Tap, 1970s metal. Again, but it was funny. So,
yeah,
we got away with it.
Now, you're talking about improv. I want to go back to that for a minute. You were in several improv groups, weren't you?
I was. I started in college with a friend of mine, and I just loved it, and I learned a huge amount, and I kept doing it.
I can see that in your work because one of the things you do, you're so inventive. There's this one scene where you're directing something and you're telling people what to do, and you pick something off of your shirt, which is not there.
My invisible lint, yeah.
Yeah, and throw it, and not only toss it off, but watch it fly away.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. That's very flattering.
But that is sometimes why you get cast, isn't it?
I think so. I think it is, especially why I get recast with a lot of the same people. Like when that person has worked with you and knows that you can be relied upon to help flesh out a script or add a couple, a tagline that when they know that you can be relied on to do that, they're going to be far more desirous to work with you again. So or I'll start on I'll do an episode of something, and it'll then turn into 4 episodes.
Bob is downplaying this, folks. It is quite unusual for the writers and directors and everybody to say, no, I want him back. Let's write him in again. Bob is tossing this off like it's just part of the business, but it's not. It's extraordinary. Now, I want to go back a little bit. Back to school, you were interested in math and engineering. In fact, you have a degree in engineering.
I do. That was what I loved in high school, and I thought I was good at it. So it made sense to study it in college. And so I went into an engineering program back here in the States, and there was no real love for it. I don't think I was necessarily bad at it. I just, without the heart, I was never going to be great at it. And I started doing a couple plays because it just seemed like it would be a good diversion. And I fell in love with the people that sort of were in the theater. There could not be less like the engineers that I was surrounded by. Engineers tend to be a little uptight, a little cerebral, and actors, particularly at college, or even high school, they're so full of life, and they're impulsive, and their parties were great. The girls were pretty, and so it just made. It was like, I kind of want to be with this group more.
Yes.
So I finished the engineering degree, but I kept doing plays and the improv troupe and stuff, and I finally got, I got some encouragement from faculty saying, you are good if this is something you really want to consider, you might want to go to graduate school and get some training, which you haven't been able to get. And so that's what I did right after college. I went into a master's program in acting and did that. So I never worked as an engineer. When I got to Los Angeles, I had several survival jobs. I'd say it was probably 2 or 3 years in Los Angeles before I started working enough that I was able to leave the survival jobs and just make enough from TV and commercials.
Okay. Well, that's not long.
No, I think in the scheme of things, I was pretty lucky. I think that's a pretty short window. Too often here, people don't give enough. It's like you've got to kind of carve out 2, 3, even 4 years. It's just the wheels turn a little slowly.
Well, it's also, this is something I realized, it really hit me hard a few years back. This profession is one of rejection. Yeah. Most of the time, you're rejected. Almost all the time, at least 50-1. Absolutely. And,
it's like when things are going well, you're getting rejected 10 times a week. If things are really bad, you're not getting rejected at all a week because you're not auditioning. And it's a hard thing, especially if you're tying up your sort of self-worth in the approval of those decision makers. When the decision keeps being no, it's really hard to not take that really personally and let it upset you.
And the truth is, sometimes it's because you're not good enough, but there are so many reasons why you might not get picked. Sometimes you're too tall, sometimes your voice is too low or too high. I mean, there are a million reasons why you might not get cast, and only one of them is that you weren't good enough. But you never know why you weren't cast. You never know.
No, they'll never tell you. And, it's so much of it is completely out of your control. The only thing you can control is how you prepare the material and what you do in the audition room. And after that, it's out of your hands. So to agonize over, well, should I have done this or should I have done that is really, really futile and can end up doing a kind of a head game on you.
And what's also true is you will always walk out of an audition knowing the exact way you should have read it.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. If only I had done this, everything would be different. This is not the case. I had a commercial director tell me, kind of admitted to me that, because you may or may not know, or your listeners may not know that, with commercials, which I tend to do a lot of, there are 3 different heads of this hydra. There's the director, but then there's also the client who, we're doing the commercial for, and then there's the agency, the ad agency, who are overseeing the production of this whole thing. So the director is not the top of the food chain. It's generally the client, and then the agency, and then the director. And
keep in mind, the client does not know acting.
No, and very often the agency really doesn't either.
Oh, okay, that I didn't know. But go ahead. So
he would tell me that, when you go through the audition process, he would come up with his favorites, his top 3 or top 4 actors for each role that he wants. And he said, what I do is I put my real number 1 choice, the guy who I really, really want, I'll put number 2 or 3 on my list. Because inevitably what happens is the agency or the client wants to feel that they are in creative control, and they'll get rid of the person who's number 1 on the list. He says, if I put my real favorite at number 2 or 3, they get to feel like they're creatively in control by knocking off number 1, and then I still end up with the guy I always wanted in the first place.
Wow, that is an amazing insight. Thank you. Yeah, because that is one of the problems, exclusively with commercials, I think, is that the client has the final say, and the client does not usually know what it takes to get the mood he's going for.
So true. Yeah, it's very frustrating. And so as an actor, as you know, you kind of have to let a lot of what their comments are sort of roll off your back, or you have to reinterpret what do they really mean by saying that? What are they hoping to get? And if you start to think, and this is true not just for commercials, but for TV and film stuff, if you start to think more like a buyer, I think it can help you as an actor. If you think like, if I was the executive producer, what would I need to see in this audition from this person to make me feel like that's a good hire? And if you start thinking, or at least considering that in your sort of preparation, it can end up, I think, helping you a lot, and make you not take things personally. Like you said earlier, when you give an example, look, I just need to see somebody who I believe could have a grandchild that's 3 years old. And so if I know that, and I'm going to read in my early 40s, it's out of my hands. I can't control that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I have a student who goes through that all the time. She shows up to auditions. She is old enough. She's 61, but she doesn't she looks like she's like maybe 45, maybe 50, but she keeps showing up. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And losing all these roles, and then she's going to start taking this personally unless she realizes, you know what, this is not me. I've been branded in the wrong category by my agents because of my real age. I was going to say,
I told her to talk to her agent because she shouldn't be going on those auditions.
Instead of trying to pigeonhole yourself into a box that already exists, figure out what box is right for you, and who you are.
And also, and tell me if you agree with me on this one, it seems to me if you're going on a commercial audition, make choices as bold as possible. Do whatever comes into your head.
I do agree, but I think that actors need to know that what you're not saying is be as big as possible.
As much energy, I think. Yeah.
Because I think, there's a real tendency, and what's I think in favor right now is a lot of very, very dry humor and a lot of subtlety. So I think often you can have actors who, in an effort to have energy in the commercial, end up just being too big, too large in terms of their facial reactions, their vocally. It just seems too actory. And the last thing that advertisers want now, and this is a big difference from, say, back in the 70s, is they don't want to ever feel that they're watching actors. They don't ever want to feel like they're seeing people act. They want to feel like a camera was just held up to real people and this is an absolute honest depiction. And so I think you need to, well, what's the subtle, what's the, where's the nuance?
Yeah. Be inventive. And, these things that we're talking about for acting, listeners, are really important for life. Make bold choices.
Yeah. It's a life lesson, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. I like this. Okay, well, Bob, thank you so much. I just loved having you on today.
But this has been really, really delightful.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. And you've been listening to In Other Words. I'm your host, Susan Scher. Thanks for joining us. Join us again. Bye-bye.